Yes.
Would this, or is there any other tool that would look at your entire code base?
Yes. So Kilo will look at your entire code base. There is another one called Augment Code that will look at it as well. Let me see if I have a repository that I can open up real quick here, because that's a really good question. And if I can show you the setting, that would help with the understanding. This is the back end of a Kilo code application. This is the control panel. And when you are wanting something to look at your entire code base, the beautiful thing about Kilo code is it shows you exactly how much of the context window you have filled up when you go to do something. You get to basically control your response accuracy based on how full you let that context window get and how much you fill it up at the beginning. The settings I'm using are, it can read up to 20 of my files that I have open up here. You can give it more, but that would be a lot of context. And hopefully you're being a little surgical about what you're changing so that it's not having to take into account too much. And then I have it limited to accessing 200 files in the workspace that are related to the task I give. So it'll look at these first that I have open, so I can kind of guide it where I want it to look if I want to, or it will check up to 200 files in the code base that are related to what I'm trying to do. And then I have it set to use 500 lines of code. A good practice is to set up a rule in your coding to use files that are less than 400 lines long. Otherwise, it gets hard for these agents to read them and edit them. So that's a rule that I have set up in my files up here in the Kilo code rules. I have that set up there. And if you have that rule and you say that your file size is 500, it's going to look there. And if you happen to have a file that's bigger, or maybe you're working on an app that Replit built and it made a 3,000 line file, it'll still cycle through that to find the piece of information it's going through. It's just going to look 500 lines at a time. But this way you can control how much of your context window you want it to have. If you wanted to read all the files, you just bring that all the way over and you have the full context of your entire application, but it'll fill up your context window fast. And when you're paying for your own AI tokens, you start to see the impact of giving it too much context. However, there is something I've noticed amazing about this. And I know this is kind of a diverge from our little app we're working on, but I think this is really interesting. It continues to keep the context of your conversation fully. So I'm like, it has a bar that shows you the context of your conversation, and it keeps the context of the conversation. And if you do a little bit of math on what you're paying for those tokens, there is, even with massive bulk discounts, there is no chance that tools like Replit and Lovable are actually keeping all of the context in the window in order to give you the credits for the price they give them. The math just would not work out. So they are truncating context, which is why the app tends to get lost on certain more complex tasks. And a tool like this doesn't get lost because it doesn't truncate any context. Pretty cool, right?
When you give it the rule to not create files more than 500 lines, so what would it do? Would it get to 400 lines and then create a part 2 of that file, or how would it go about it?
So that rule goes with another more general instruction to make everything modular. So what Replit and Lovable like to do is say, I have this functionality. I'm going to put every piece of this functionality in one file. Let's imagine it's a chat window. It's going to have all of the input and output controls, all of the chat context, all of the message display rules, all of the refresh rules, all of that in one file. And that'll get to be 2,000 characters or 2,000 lines long. So you give it a rule that everything must be modular and that none of the modules need to be, or should be more than 500 lines long. I tell mine 300 to 400 lines. And then when it builds that window, it's going to build a parent file that calls all of the functions necessary to make that work. And each of the functions are separated out into shorter files. So you need to change one piece of functionality, you don't accidentally affect the rest of the application.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and follow. And if you need help building or finishing your app, click the link in my bio to book a one-on-one Zoom call to take a look at your project.